Hello and welcome to the Reviews Brothers, where I have been going through the entire Sega Mega Drive or Genesis library and picking out 10 games for each letter that don't get talked about all that often. We are on the letter M today, and this was a fun one to do. There was a surprising amount of games and definitely a few that I could have included that haven't been included here. But you're stuck with these ones. So how about I shut up, you press that subscribe button, and we take a look at some games. Let's start with Mystical Fighter. This is a beat 'em up in the style of games like Streets of Rage. There's not really much given away in terms of the story, but basically 300 years ago an evil lord mastered some forbidden magic and decided to take over the land. But you, a good kabuki warrior, decide that that's just not on. So you set out to fight the evil lord's minions and then kick him in the nuts. So the game is a pretty basic beat 'em up, but that doesn't mean it's not fun. You walk from left to right through some ancient locations like temples, caves, forests and so on, and as you walk around the screen will stop from time to time and enemies will appear, usually 2 or 3 at a time. You just need to beat them up to proceed. You've got 3 buttons here. You can attack, jump and use magic. To attack, you just hammer the button and you'll do the usual combo that these games are famous for, and it all works well enough against most enemies. But you can also do a jump attack that knocks enemies to the floor, or you can do a speedy slide attack by running and attacking. This is actually the best move in the game, and most enemies seem unable to do anything about it if you use it, so just cheese it if you get stuck. You can also grab enemies and do a couple of different throws, but you have to be careful as some enemies will always attack you if you do try and grab them. Enemies come in a nice variety. You get demons, soldiers, animal-looking things, and so on. They all have the ancient demon designs that you get from this part of the world, and I really like how they look. The bosses here are large, usually taking up nearly half the screen, and they can be tough, but if you use the slide trick, then you'll breeze through most of them. As you go through the levels, you'll find a few pickups, mostly health, but sometimes you get magic. And the magic here works a bit like Golden Axe, in that the more magic icons you've collected, the more powerful it is when you use it. The actual effects aren't particularly spectacular, just a kind of bit of screen rumbling and some lightning, but they do the job. Something I like here is that there's hidden bonus areas in levels as well, but they're hidden in plain sight, so make sure you try walking through every door or window you see, as well as things like waterfalls, as there might just be something behind it that will help you out. Graphics wise, the game's okay. It's a bit basic and the animation doesn't have many frames, but it doesn't look terrible. But I would have expected better for a 1992 game. The music is pretty good though. Overall, this is a basic beat 'em up which can be played in 2-player co-op. It is worth a playthrough, but maybe not one that you'll come back to all that often. Next up is Mr. Nutz. This is a fun little platform game from Ocean, who, let's be honest, aren't always good at putting out fun games. Anyway, you are the terribly maimed Mr. Nutz, a squirrel who's on a quest to defeat the evil Mr. Blizzard, a yeti who's using his magic powers to take over the world and make everything cold. Of course, the only way to do this is to explore 5 worlds, each of which have 5 levels within them. The levels are packed with various enemies, though I don't know if they're actual enemies or just the local inhabitants that you've decided to murder. Either way, there's lots on every level. These range from walking apples and plants to spiders, wasps and other insect things. To defeat enemies, you've got a few options. You can either just jump on their heads, and this works okay, but the hit detection is a little bit off, so make sure you're right on top of enemies, and then you'll be fine. As well as this, you can collect acorns, which you can throw. These kill most enemies in just 1 hit, but can be tough to aim, and you can only throw them while you're stood up, so small enemies can be a real pain in the ass. Your goal on basically every stage is just to get to the end, but it's rarely a case of just walking to the exit. Levels can be large and often quite open and maze-like. The exit to the stage could be anywhere as well, not always just on the right hand side. Sometimes you'll need to get to the top left and so on. So you'll do lots of exploring here, and some levels can be a little tedious, especially as some require you to find buttons to press to open new paths, though there is never any indication of where the buttons are or what the thing they open is. To be fair though, I didn't ever really have a problem getting around, and while the levels are quite big, they were never overly large that I was lost for ages. And most importantly, there's no time limits or anything like that. Each world has 5 levels within it, with the last one being a boss fight. These are actually pretty fun. They've got patterns that you'll need to learn, though they're never too tough. I do quite like the designs on them though. In fact, the graphics in general are very good. Everything is bright and colourful and really looks very 90s. There's a good variety of enemies and the worlds here are quite different, though the levels within the worlds all look quite similar. What's nice is that most stages will try to add something new, like having to push buttons I mentioned, or having swimming sections, or swinging around on ropes, moving platforms, that sort of thing, and it does stop the game from getting boring. Thankfully you can take a few hits here, which is nice, though your sprite is pretty big and taking damage is way easier than it should be, mostly thanks to hit detection though. There's also a few blind jumps, which is always quite scary, but I managed to get through the game fairly easily once I got used to how it all worked. One top tip from me though is just to ignore most enemies when you can, that really helps get through it. But this is a pretty solid platform game. It's not going to blow anyone away, but it's certainly not terrible, and worth a look if you like mascot platformers. And if you do like platform games, you might want to try out the game whose name I'm going to butcher. This is Magical Hat no Buttobi Tābo Daibōken. I think that was pretty good. It's based on an anime where the hero is from 63,000 years ago and fighting against an army of demons with his magical hat. It's the story of the kid's life. You control Hat, that's the kid's name. And you go through your usual selections of platforming worlds where you have to find the exit and eventually after 3 rounds, the boss of that world. But the levels here are all big and need a fair bit of exploring. There's quite a few ways to throw yourself around them though. You can run and jump of course, but you really have to get used to the momentum of the game here. You start really slow to move and then you have to build up your speed if you want to do any decent jumps. Some stages have poles in them that you can run and jump into, and depending on the speed and angle, you can use them to launch yourself quite far into the air or across the stage, but it is hard to get this right. There's also bounce pads all over the place, usually on walls. You can essentially use these to wall jump, and by hammering the jump button while you're in the air, you can actually slowly glide down as well. It's no surprise that enemies and hazards are everywhere in the levels. To attack, you punch, and this is a pretty decent attack to be fair. Most enemies only take 1 hit. You can also jump on their heads, though be careful as they do often take more than 1 jump to defeat and they'll slowly get buried into the ground as you jump on them, and you can also sometimes fall into them and hurt yourself. Don't do that. Also in levels, there's some stone statues. Be sure to punch these as they contain power-ups for you that you can access in your pause menu to make you faster, some make you stronger, that sort of thing. And most importantly, you've got a little egg friend that you can find hiding in the statue thingies. If you grab it, you can use him as a projectile to throw at enemies, and this is really handy. The egg guy will come back to you all the time until you take a hit, at which point he'll go away. And if you take a hit when you don't have the egg in your hand, you die, which is really annoying. The game really could have done with a life bar, but once you get used to it, it is okay. After every few stages, you get a boss, and these are all fun to fight. You know the drill with these, you got to figure out their pattern and deal damage when you can. I had a good time with the ones I fought. Once you've beaten a boss though, you still might have to explore the level in order to find an item that you'll need to exit the stage. Thankfully it's never too far away. Graphics wise, the game looks excellent. It's super bright and colourful with loads of characters, which is no surprise I guess as it's based on something already. And you remember how I said it sort of left Japan? Well, over here in the West they changed all the graphics and released the game as Decap Attack, which is a great game, meaning that this is too. And also if you have the Master System, you'll notice the game is very similar to Psycho Fox. It uses many of the same mechanics, and the developer seemed to love it back in the day. And there's also a game on the NES. Is it Kid Nicky? I can't remember. But yeah, this is a really good game. Even if you have Decap Attack, this version is still well worth playing. It's great fun. Time for something a little different. This is Man Overboard, sometimes known as SOS or Lucifer or something like that. This is a fun little puzzle game where you control Kevin Codner. I see what they did there. He's an aquatic hero. You hear that the SS Lucifer, which is a terrible name for a boat, I'm sure we can agree, is in a spot of bother. So you as a hero set off to see what's going on, and you find that lots of people are in tow rubble. So the aim of the game is to go from level to level, each of which has a number of people trapped in it. Your job is to clear a path for them so they can get to the exit door without them killing themselves along the way or the water level getting so high that they all drown. You run around the levels like it's a platform game, and you've got a few actions you can do. You can jump, drop bombs, and use the C button to interact with various things. Levels are multi-tiered, and you'll need to climb ladders and things to get around. All the while, people trapped on the stage will basically walk in a straight line. If they hit an obstacle like a wall, they'll turn around and walk the other direction. They also automatically climb any ladders that they walk past. You've got no control over the other characters whatsoever. This means that you'll likely be using a lot of trial and error, and while it can be a bit frustrating at first, it's not too bad, and thankfully you'll get a password after every level. So levels will have various obstacles blocking your way. You'll wander around figuring out what you need to blow up with your bombs to create a path that doesn't make the idiots walk into spikes or crushers, that sort of thing. As well as this, there's various levers in most levels. You can do various things with the levers, but mostly they control the conveyor belts that are around the stages, which of course send the people that you're trying to save in the wrong direction most of the time. Now, usually what is best to try and do is trap these survivors somewhere. Meanwhile, you go and explore the level and try to figure out what route everyone should take. This is usually doable, though still won't guarantee that you'll do it all in time. Other times you'll basically have to race ahead of the survivors and do everything as fast as you can before they catch up with you. One wrong move and you're done for. Something else to keep in mind is that you have to exit the level at a different point to the survivors. Usually it's not too far away, but sometimes it can be on the opposite side of the stage, meaning that you might not be able to get there without drowning. Thankfully you can actually swim pretty well, and you even have an oxygen tank that helps. And there's even spares in the stages. In fact, having said this, I never died myself by drowning, only by not being able to stop the others from drowning, or getting them killed or crushed or set on fire. You know, the fun stuff. So really the game is pretty simple in concept, it's just a case of save the survivors. But as with all puzzle games like this, it gets pretty tough pretty quick. It looks nice and colourful though, and it's definitely got that Amiga style written all over it, but that's alright, I kinda like it. And if you like puzzle platform games, I really would recommend giving this a go. It is good fun. Now it's time for the obligatory shooter. This is Master of Weapon. Not plural, just one weapon. This was only released in Japan, unless I've missed it somewhere and it's called something else over here. The story is that after nuclear war, Earth's environment has been messed up. There's some strange convoluted stuff about the god system and a bunch of statues taking it over. It doesn't matter, go shoot things. It's a vertically scrolling shooter, and as is tradition, you are a single ship sent out to take on thousands of enemies with some pretty devastating weapons. But that still means that you have no shields, and if an enemy so much as breathes on you, you're dead. So you'll fly up the screen through your usual shooter locations. You've got cities, forests, oceans, futuristic looking zones, and so on. As you fly up the screen, hundreds of enemies fly down, and you'll need to shoot them before they shoot you. Simple. Enemies come in your usual variety of spaceship, tank, turret, plane, chopper, and so on. And to be fair, they all look good. It's hard when you've talked about so many of these games, as they really do play very similarly to each other, so there's not a lot new to say. Here though, you have to fire bombs as well as lasers. Bombs are used to hit ground targets, and have a much shorter forward range than your lasers do, which of course go the full length of the screen. Something that's a pain though is that you often can't tell if an enemy is land or air, so there were times where I'd die trying to avoid an enemy that I could have just flown over, or even times where I'd fly into an enemy that I thought was below me. You start with your basic pea shooter, but this can be upgraded to become quite powerful, and there's also a whole load of weapons you can get, all represented by different letters. These can change your laser to have spread or be a homing shot, and that sort of thing. And the same applies to your bombs, there's different bomb types. Though to be honest, it's kind of hard to notice with them. As with most games like this, I just try to get the spread weapon and stick with it. Something I do really like though is that you can blow up buildings on the ground with your bombs. There's absolutely no reason to do this, but it looks pretty cool. As well as your regular weapons, you also have an H-bomb. This is your screen clearing attack, and the game is pretty generous with these, so don't be afraid to use them. And if you see the S, that'll speed you up, and thankfully you never get so fast that it's uncontrollable. That sometimes does happen in games like this. Eventually you'll reach the boss of the stage, and these are pretty tough, and I died a lot with bosses, until I figured out their strange patterns. But as always, once you get it, they become quite manageable. In fact, something that's quite cool about the game is that it's essentially one long stage. When you die, you respawn exactly where you died, and when you beat a level, it doesn't fade to black or anything, you just carry on the next one. I do really like it when games do this. Graphics wise, the game looks good. Most of it is a bit generic, but it's certainly not bad. And the sounds and music are actually quite good and meaty, though there are some annoying high-pitched sounds that I don't like. But still, this is a fun shooter. It controls well and got some nice ideas in it. Give it a try if you like this sort of thing. If you want another beat 'em up, then Mazin Saga is an interesting one. You are Koji Kabuto, a chap that uses the Mazinga Z armour, and your job is to fight off the evil bio beasts that have appeared around the world. You play through 6 stages, all taking place in different parts of the world, and in true beat 'em up fashion, you need to walk forwards a little bit until the screen stops, and then a bunch of enemies will appear, and you have to beat them up. Simple. All the enemies here are different types of bio beasts, and I quite like the designs of them all. They range from standard humanoid things to armadillo monsters, lizard dudes, and so on. The designs are pretty cool, though you will have seen almost all enemy types by about level 3. There's your standard combo done by hammering the attack button, of course. This is decent enough, but enemies can and will attack you through it sometimes. They also have a tendency to try and surround you. Thankfully, you also have a jump attack that knocks them to the ground and a spinning attack that's really good. And by pressing C, you do an all-around attack, but this will drain some of your life, so only use it when you're in a pickle. The levels here aren't too long, and I do like the look of them all. And something else that's pretty cool are the bosses. These are often huge creatures, and it gives the game some sort of Power Rangers vibes. As you're fighting, you'll often see the boss, or at least parts of the boss, before having to fight the full boss. They're massive, and there's bits where you're just attacking a foot or an arm of the monster. But then at the end of the stage, it goes full Power Rangers and you grow to the size of a skyscraper, and the game turns into a one-on-one fighter. It's a basic one-on-one fighter, but it's pretty fun all the same. Here you're always facing your opponent, and you can jump, attack and block, and depending on the direction on the D-pad that you're pressing, you do different attacks. You've got some high, low and long range and short range attacks, and you need to mix up what ones you use in order to take down the enemies, as they can also jump, attack and block. So make sure you do block, because counter-attacks here are very important. I actually really like these one-on-one fights, even though they are pretty basic. It's a nice way to finish off a stage. The game has some nice graphics, and the sprites are all pretty small, but the animation is really good, and I like the art style. And when you grow, your sprites do get a lot bigger, and it still looks good. It's got that sort of marionette feel to things, which I know some people don't like, and to be honest I don't in some games, but I do think it works here. There's also a good variety in the stages, and you even get auto-scrolling levels and lots of massive monsters, and the game in general does a good job of keeping things fresh. I actually had no idea what this game was when I fired it up. To be honest, I was expecting it to be an RPG, but instead I got a pretty solid beat 'em up that I had a really good time with. I definitely recommend it, and it's a shame that it's a single player game only. This is McDonald's Treasureland adventure from Treasure. So you know it's going to be strange, but good. You play as Ronald McCreepyass, and one day he's out walking around being a creep when he finds a part of a treasure map. He decides he wants to complete the map and find out what the treasure is. The problem is, some other evil bastards have the other parts, so you've got to go murder them and get them. And hopefully your little hamburger mates will help you along the way. Also, I haven't finished the game yet, but what's betting that the prize at the end is some form of burger? Anyway, the game is a side-scrolling platform game, and as Rondon, you explore some pretty large levels where you just need to find the exit of the stage. For the most part, this is by going from left to right, but there's a few mechanics that you'll need to get used to if you want to get there. Ronnie can run and jump of course, and to attack the abundance of enemies in levels, he fires magic, which I didn't know he could do. The magic is actually pretty good, and there's lots of quite tough enemies, surprisingly, so you'll want to collect the magic power-ups that make it deal more damage. You also have your clown handkerchief. This fires straight up in the air, and you can use it to grab onto handles and things like that to pull yourself up onto new ledges. You can also use it to hang on zip lines and things like that. Basically it helps you get around the stages and reach areas you wouldn't be able to with just regular jumps. Your health is represented by gems, and the health system here is actually kind of convoluted for no real reason. You start with 3 gems, but you can collect more as you play, having up to 7. And you can also collect rings. There's silver and gold rings. Collecting 3 gold rings gives you a health gem, restoring 1 part of your health. Gold rings are essentially stored health, so if you have full health and collect a gold ring, you won't lose health when you take damage, you'll lose a ring. You get it? It's confusing, but it's fine, just collect everything. You also collect money as you play. It's dotted around the stages, and enemies will also drop it when you kill them to death. Levels have shops in them that you can visit, and you can buy more health, extra lives, magical upgrades, and so on. You can also buy balloons, and I really recommend you do, as these are very handy. Basically, if you fall in a hole and you have a balloon, you use it to float out of the hole rather than lose a life. This is really handy. The trouble is, everything in the shops is so damn expensive. Thankfully, you can find items out in the wild if you explore enough. The variety in stages is pretty good, and being a treasure game, there's loads of gimmicks here. Some stages are fairly standard, some have obstacles on timers that you'll need to get through, some see you in auto-scrolling stages, others have loads of tricky zip lines and things like that. They've gone all out in making sure something new happens often, so you don't really get bored. And every few stages you get to fight a boss, and these are really fun, but they're kind of easy, which is a bit of a shame. In fact, when you get used to the controls, the game itself does get quite easy. But I'm not complaining, I've got too many games to play to worry about getting stuck in a McDonald's one. It all looks really good. The graphics here are really bright and colourful, and there's loads of cool stuff happening all over the place, with waterfalls, moving platforms, trains and all sorts in most stages. And you probably will be surprised with how good this game is. Now, Treasure have a pretty good track record, so it's not that crazy. It's just that you wouldn't necessarily expect them to put so much effort into a licensed McDonald's game. I'm guessing they didn't have much of a choice about making it, and I wouldn't be surprised if the game started out having nothing to do with McDonald's until they got the license. But it's one of those games where the license is almost irrelevant. This would be a good game even if it starred original characters. If you see it, don't pass it up. I'm loving it. Micro Machines is a toy line that I'm a big fan of, even though I don't care about cars. And I've always been a fan of the video games. This is Micro Machines 2. It's a racing game featuring a whole load of everyone's favourite miniature vehicles. In the single player, you pick from a ragtag group of characters, each of which controls slightly differently, though it is pretty hard to tell the difference between most of them. And some of them look like losers, so you'll never choose them and you'll always pick Spider, the cool guy. Once you've chosen your character though, you go through a series of races against 3 other racers. Unlike some games in the series, you don't get to choose who you race against. And all the characters have different racing skills, with some being nearly impossible to beat. You don't get to choose your vehicle or tracks either. This is all done in a certain order, and it is a bit of a shame, as you don't have any cups or anything like that to choose from. There's about 25 races to go through, and about 10 or so vehicles, including dune buggies, Formula 1 cars, sports cars, motorboats, helicopters, and so on. The courses are all really varied though, and having some of the tiny vehicles really does lend to some imaginative level design. You'll be racing all over the place, on pool tables, in the bath, across the kitchen table, or in the garden. The levels are great and have got all sorts of hazards like food, cutlery, plants, and even things like screws and tools. These are placed around the course in pretty annoying places, but deliberately so. And it definitely adds to the already considerable challenge. You've got 3 laps per race and very little room for error. There's no sort of map or anything, so memorization is key here. You probably won't win many, if any, of the races on your first try, thanks to some windy courses that are very easy to fall off. And you'll be falling off of tables as well as exploding on hazards, and if you do, it can take a while to get back on the track, and it only takes one wrong move to go from first place to last. And as the courses aren't that long, it can often mean that you have barely any time to catch up to anyone else. Oh, and don't think that you can be cheeky and just do some off-roading, as if you stray too far from the course, you'll explode in a puff of smoke and are taken back on the track, usually a few places behind. When you're racing, you've got to come first or second if you want to progress. Any lower than that and you'll lose a life and have to retry. You do get a few continues, but if you lose them all, you just have to start from the very first race no matter what. And this can be annoying, as it means that you'll be playing the same first races over and over again until you've learned them all. You do get a few game modes here though, so you can practice stages in time trial, and you'll probably need to do this if you want to get anywhere, unless you just like repeating the same tracks over and over. What's really cool about the game though is that the cartridge itself, it's so strange. You can play the game with up to 4 players, and the cartridge itself actually has 2 controller ports built in on it, so you can plug the controllers directly into the cartridge. Sadly, I don't have 1 friend, let alone 3, which is a shame as I'd love to play this in 4 player to see what it's like. The single player is pretty damn tough though, but it is doable, and it's still good fun if you can handle the challenge. This is Mega Swiv. This is a cool vertically scrolling shooter, and the story here is that there's an evil underground race that have basically come to the surface and have stolen a bunch of our most dangerous weapons, vehicles and so on. So as always, it's down to a single person to go out with a load of deadly fire of their own to take down the bastards. And yes, you can still only take 1 hit yourself. What's interesting here is that you can select from 2 different vehicles, which you have to do in the options menu. The default is a helicopter which flies up the screen. What's cool is that you start with a few weapons. You've got a straightforward missile shot, a flamethrower and a wider spread laser gun. You can switch between them all with the press of a button, and they all have their bonuses. The missile shot is medium power but only fires ahead of you in a narrow range. The flamethrower is really powerful but has a very short range. It's tough to use as you have to get close to enemies, but it does finish them off pretty quickly. And the laser shot starts off just firing ahead. But all these weapons can be upgraded to fire more shots and to have a bigger range, and the laser is my favourite because it basically ends up as your spread shot, though I did find myself still swapping weapons to use what was best for the enemy in the situation I was in. And speaking of enemies, they're mostly your standard tank, chopper and plane, which makes sense as it's about a race of people that have taken control of our own stuff. As the screen scrolls up, you have various other things you can blow up, including buildings. Sometimes these will drop power-ups for you, which of course make your shots more powerful. Eventually you'll get to a boss. These are always massive and look pretty cool. They're also tough. They take a lot of hits and will fire lots of projectiles at you. Most of them took me quite a while. You can find a shield in some areas. To use it, you've got to find one and then touch it and it goes around you. But interestingly, you can also choose to shoot it instead, and this will basically make it explode and destroy every enemy on the screen. This comes in handy if you've already got a shield and find a second one. And don't forget, if you're bored of the helicopter, to go to the options menu and change to use the Jeep. The Jeep has these same weapons and levels, but it plays quite differently. The screen will still scroll up vertically, but as the Jeep you can move around and shoot in any direction, not just forwards like the helicopter. This really changes the game and actually makes it quite a bit harder. Though what's interesting is that when you're the chopper, you can fly over ground enemies of course, and when you're in the Jeep it's the opposite, you can drive under flying enemies, but will crash into ground ones. I don't know why this surprised me when I played it, as it makes perfect sense, but it did, and it's surprisingly hard to get used to, at least it was for me. Graphics wise the game is good, it's got nice sprites, and they do make me think of the Amiga style with thick colours and sprites, but I do like how it looks and it all moves nice and smooth. And it's just a fun game to play. It's very tough, but it's one that I kept having just one more try. Definitely give it a go. And finally for today, here is Midnight Resistance. You play as Johnny Ford, a badass whose job it is to go around the world and shut down drug cartels. You get home from a mission one day to find your family's been kidnapped. Big mistake. So off you go to hunt down and kill the people that have taken your family. The game is a 2D shooter similar to Contra, but no, it's not that good. In fact, at first it seems really janky and kinda crap, but give it a proper chance and you'll soon realise that it is really janky, but kinda fun. Every level sees you going through various cities, bases and so on of the evil gang that nabbed your family, so you'll just have to shoot your way through every stage, defeating the hordes of enemy soldiers and their vehicles. There's not a massive variety of bad guys, mostly soldiers in various forms, in fact that's basically all you get, but some have guns, some have knives and some seem to think that they're Wolverine. Luckily you've got a gun with unlimited ammo, and it's pretty decent. When you kill enemies you get points which will eventually give you an extra life, but also some of them will drop keys. Make sure you pick up as many keys as you can, as between stages when you've defeated the bosses, which are all really fun by the way, they're massive machines, robots, tanks and so on, and they've got the usual patterns to figure out if you want to beat them. Anyway, once you've done that, you go to a sort of storage area where there's various other weapons and power-ups in lockers. You can get 3-way weapons, shotguns, flamethrowers and so on. And as well as this you can get power-ups that make you faster, have better firing rates and things like that. You unlock these cabinets with the keys that you've collected, and they range from needing 1 key to open to sometimes 3 or more. I actually really like this as it makes you pick carefully from the options available. All the weapons you get from the cabinets use ammo though, so you might want to just keep what weapons you have and just use the keys to get the ammo lockers for them. Of course if you die you'll lose everything that you've bought, so just don't die. Now here's the weird thing about the game, it's the controls. You move as normal with the D-pad, but shooting works differently here. Instead of just pressing the D-pad in the direction you want to fire, instead you have to press a button that turns your shooting on or off. So basically you fire automatically, and really I don't see any reason why you'd ever turn it off. Then you use the A and C buttons to rotate either clockwise or counterclockwise, so you can shoot in one direction while moving in another. This is actually a pretty nice mechanic and it does work well, although you will have to be careful as it means you can't immediately shoot in any given direction. So if an enemy appears behind you, then you want to slowly rotate and shoot them and try and stay out of their way while you do it. It will mean that you die a few times while you get used to it all, or even when you are used to it, sometimes you just don't have time to rotate enough. But I never found it annoying, and I do like how it works. I also like the variety in stages, and they even throw in some auto-scrolling stages to mix things up, as well as things like having to go up and down the screen instead of left and right. The graphics are nothing special, in fact they're sometimes a bit crap, and there isn't much animation, but it does the job. Overall though, it's a really fun game that was quite different to what I was expecting, and it is worth playing for sure. So there you go, 10 more games for the Mega Drive or Genesis that you might not have tried. As always, let me know what else I could have included. There were quite a few that I was debating getting in there, so I'm sure someone won't be happy with what I left out. On screen now you can see where you can follow me, so why not do so? I've got loads of great content for everyone to enjoy. And now all that's left for me to say is thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.